We're live now, so... Alright, Andrew Holmes, welcome to the Popcorn Space. Just a reminder.
Andrew Holmes?
Andrew Holmes with an L, like bowl.
Okay.
Both? What? Or no, what am I thinking about? Both. That's the word I'm thinking of.
Both?
When people say both of them.
Yeah.
Now, I'm trying to do this introduction every time, so I say, welcome to the Popcorn Space. Remember, this is an area of free thought for... what did I say? Just remember, let the thoughts flow out.
You're going to have to write it down.
Anything you want to say. I did write it down. It was on my phone. But anything you think of or that comes to mind, feel free to bring it up. Try your best not to be offensive. And if you are offensive, we'll address it and try to backpedal. Alrighty, how you doing tonight, Andrew?
I'm doing okay, man.
Yeah?
Tired, but good.
That is good.
Mm-hmm. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So, okay.
You got a new tattoo since the last time I saw you.
Oh yeah, I did. I had it last week. We didn't bring it up on the podcast, but this time I also have a coffee mug that goes with it.
Wow.
So my new tattoo, you can't really see it for the people watching live. Here, I'll show it like that. But it's a lobster. I had someone today went up to me and saw it, and they went, "Hey, it's crawfish season." I said, "Well, it's a lobster, but thanks." And no, I'm not just like a seafood fanatic. It's actually a Jordan Peterson thing.
Okay.
I won't take the time to go into it right now because I guess the basics of it is...
It's kind of along the lines of what we're talking about a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll get into it. So
I think.
It's about his book, 12 Rules for Life. His first chapter is called Stand Up Straight with Your Shoulders Back. And the idea is that it's kind of about adopting a stance of ready engagement with the world and reflecting that in your posture. And so he compares it to how the lobsters will stretch themselves out after they've won a fight, and they'll kind of shrink down after they've lost a fight, but their brains run on serotonin just like ours. And so serotonin is what they put in the antidepressant medication that they've tested on lobsters, and when they do that to a lobster who's lost a fight, he'll stretch back out as if he's just won a fight. And it kind of works like the effect when, they say like if you fake a smile, it'll still make you feel better. So it's kind of the same way of just trying to adopt that stance of standing up straight with your shoulders back so people will take you more seriously and you can, be a more serious person, I guess.
That's cool.
I felt like I've been saying it so much, I feel like I'm in a routine, like I'm practicing a school speech.
I get that.
I don't enjoy myself saying it anymore. So people are like, "Well, you got a lobster?" I'm like, "I just like lobsters."
Yeah, it is weird how even a simple posture change can totally change your outlook.
Yeah.
Like if you're walking around just a little bit more upright, I guess.
Yeah.
You kind of have a little bit more of a... Is it the end of the world?
No, I think it's okay. I think the light's just flipping out. It's okay. Keep going, sorry.
Well, I was just saying it's crazy how much it changes your perspective, if you're just standing up straight can really make you feel more sure of yourself. As small of an action as it is, it has a noticeable effect, I think.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's a cool reminder. Who drew that tattoo for you?
A guy named Andrew Holmes.
Holmes?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
He's a homie of mine. No, it was really cool, and you weren't there when I got it. It was really sad.
Yeah.
Because you said you'd be there. But,
plans, man.
No, it took 2.5 hours, which was very different for me, because I only had this other little baby tattoo.
It took 2.5 hours?
It took 2.5 hours. So the other one took like 20 minutes. So I wasn't used to getting a tattoo for that long. And it's not the...
Starts going numb after
it's not the worst pain ever, but it was just like really uncomfortable for so long. And at a certain point I was like, I'm just really ready for you to finish up. Like, I don't want you to like rush, I guess, but
He did a good job with it though.
He did a fantastic job.
Really good.
It was Biz was his name at La Leyenda in Abilene, Texas, and he's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, he did a really good job. He's got good, clean line work, and the color looks good. Yeah. I was a little nervous about the color being added, but I think it looks good.
You know what? No one told me about the color being added, making them nervous, until he was literally adding the color. And Casey was like, "Are you sure you want it to be red?" And I was like, "Well, it's happening now." So
it's already started. It's too late. You can't just have a red butt, and that's it. We're not going to stop there.
That'd be an interesting way to explain it. Like, the red butt symbolizes something. No, but to get into this podcast, or this episode, I wanted this to kind of be a continuation of what we'd done like 2 or 3 weeks ago
Sure.
with your father, which was What is God?
Andy Holmes.
Andy Holmes. So, I remember that you had been talking about, what was the one word? I asked you to define what is God in one word, and you said consciousness, right?
I think so. What did you say? Reality, maybe?
I said reality, yeah.
Okay, so I said consciousness. Because I remember really agreeing with what you had.
Well,
said.
it's interesting. So I've been, right now in college, because I'm a college student, I've been taking philosophy. Not philosophy, I'm crazy. I've been taking psychology.
Okay.
I mix big words. No, but I was writing a bunch of notes down, and I started writing kind of a separate string of notes for the podcast, because I was like, wow, this feels like a lot like what I want to talk about. So, the first thing is, we were talking about, like, kind of how our senses work and perceive the world, and she was just defining, I wrote down, she was like, how do scent molecules in the air become impulses in our brain? And it was interesting. That's what I meant kind of by like reality being God. Like everything that is and that is perceived by us, that is like this like interconnectedness with the world and the world itself. So like, I don't know, like people who I guess don't believe in God, like it confuses me. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm just saying it confuses me because they say...
Here's something though, real quick, that I was kind of pondering on the other day. Like, if somebody asked me if I believe in God, I think that my answer would be like, I mean, I don't really believe in God, I see God. And it's kind of like you see God or you don't see it, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I think. Because it's more of a perception than like a... Belief kind of insinuates that it's like, you can see the unseen, right? But I think it's clear once you see it,
it's almost
you can't stop seeing it. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like it's more of...
It's
not like it's not like it's a fact. I don't know that God is a fact, but it's more, at least to me, an understanding, if that makes sense. Like, when I talk to people who I think really are on the same page as me as far as God, I can describe something and like, I felt God in this moment, that like, I understand that, like I feel that. And I felt God in this moment. You were telling me about your song England, and you were like, that really felt like a God moment when I was writing that. It felt like it came to me. And I felt like I was interacting with God. And I was like, I can feel that. Like when I listen to that song, I can feel this kind of interconnectedness and love. It's weird to think...
It's a high compliment. Thank you very much.
Well, you didn't come up with it. It was God anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, honestly, I'm cool with giving out the credit.
Well, it's
just
like...
the instrument.
It's interesting because when you think of the word love and how we use, or how we grow up using the word love as something that you would tell, I guess, your family and like a potential partner or something like that. And I remember it was interesting because like in high school, I remember being in a few different relationships, and you like always wonder like when it's appropriate to use the word love because you're 13 and you don't have any idea what it means. But I think people are supposed to say this at some point.
Right, yeah. Social obligation, not a feeling.
Well, it's like, I mean, I wanted to say, I don't know why I'd say it's social obligation, because I wanted to say it, but it felt very much like...
You wanted to say it because that's what it felt right.
I was like, I wanted to emulate, like I see like in movies, people people have this real connection, and they say, I love you, and I'm like, ooh, I want that. So I turned to this 13-year-old, and I'm like, I love you.
Let's specify that you were also 13, please.
Yeah, I was also 13. I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah.
I said, try not to say anything.
I don't want this podcast to go viral for the wrong reasons.
We got to backpedal. Isabella Carlton said hi to you.
Hey.
To me, so it's okay.
I guess the camera's over here. Hey.
You know her, right?
Yeah.
She's related to
John
Hester. Right. Okay, cool.
Yes, I do.
Well, that's cool.
She's sweet.
Yeah. But love, what I was saying about love, it's just interesting how I feel like I've grown up with this word, and I think it was, I guess I was like 13 or 14 in 7th grade when I started thinking about the beginning. And I don't think I got into this last time, so I'll try to get into it real quick.
You're talking about like the beginning?
The beginning, yeah.
Okay.
It's funny, I was watching this
That's a tough subject.
Yeah. Well, I was watching this interview with Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about, I think it was Dave Rubin interviewing him, and he said, you're a really serious person. You think about the world a lot and the world around you, a lot more than a lot of people do, because a lot of people just dismiss it, and it's easier not to think about it. And he said, when do you think you became such a serious person? And he said, I'm not going to spoil it. You should go listen to the interview.
I think I've heard it. No.
But he was talking about when he became a serious person. And for me, I think I've always been probably more melodramatic than I should have been in my whole life, which is why I was an actor and stuff. But
yeah.
But I think I really became a serious person, like a serious thinker, thinking about the world, at least in small doses, in like 7th grade when I was thinking. It might have been like 7th or 8th grade when I started getting obsessed with this idea of the beginning. I remember being in like elementary school, or like before that, like kindergarten or something like that, and being in church on Sunday, and we were talking about the beginning, and we're like huddled up as these little kids that don't know anything, and one kid was like, my dad told me it like started off and there's just like an arm, and then the arm built the rest of the person, and that was God, and then he created everything. I remember him saying that specifically. I know his name, but I won't say it.
Okay.
But I will say that he was the salutatorian at my high school. Anyway, so he's got some stuff figured out. No, but I remember...
Once he figured out the beginning, it was just...
It was just from there. It's when
he
became a serious person in pre-K or whatever at church. But I remember thinking in 7th grade, getting obsessed with it, like the beginning, that doesn't make sense because there's always been time. How could there have been a beginning of time that just like feels like such a paradox? And it just didn't make sense to me. It like hurt my brain to think about. Which is, I think, why a lot of people don't want to think about that stuff, and they just dismiss it.
Well, yeah, part of it's unfathomable. Like, you can't really wrap your mind around there being no beginning.
You should
and
pull
no
that a
end
little bit
to
closer
God.
to you. Like, you want to, I don't mean to interrupt you, I want to be like a little bit closer.
It's hard to think about, is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
It's hard to think about God having no beginning or no end, because as soon as you start thinking about it,
It's freaky, man.
beginning.
It's freaky.
Like,
Well, it's kind of like, what made sense to me was just, and this doesn't make sense like when I say it, like I'm going to break some grammar rules because it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But you can actually move the little box itself if you need to.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I think it's
But I'm about to break some grammar rules, but it's like love just made sense. So in the Bible it says God is love, and I kind of took that and ran with it. And so I was thinking in the beginning, love. So if there was nothing, because obviously it's like, what is it in science? It's like something, it's an object not in motion will not become an object in motion unless acted upon by an outside force.
Yeah.
So if there's nothing, which obviously there should be, because what would be an outside force before anything? Because there's nothing. But love is this like concept that just defeats nothing, if that makes sense. Love overcame absolutely nothing, which is grammatically sounds like love didn't do a lot, but
Well, it wouldn't be nothing if there was love floating around somewhere, like...
right, but it's almost just like
But obviously love isn't like
well, it was
being,
the beginning.
That's
Love
like,
wasn't floating around because it's the beginning.
Well, but
There was
wasn't
no
the beginning,
time before the
because
beginning.
it had no beginning and no end. God didn't have...
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's the beginning of everything. What I'm saying is like we think of it linearly, like in time. So you think of nothingness as just vast space, but it's not. It's the absence of space. It's the absence of anything. So there would be no love floating around in space. It would just be nothing love, and everything became, if that makes sense.
Sort of, I
I know.
guess.
I'm
It's too
really-
big of a concept for me to wrap my head around, I guess, in this...
But it just made sense that like, so if love
I
was
can't visualize what you're saying.
right, it's hard. It's kind of like
It's hard to articulate, I'm sure. I mean, this whole area...
it is really hard to
conversation is
articulate.
hard
That's
to
why.
figure out.
That's why I probably didn't get into it last time. But it's like, love. So love is. So we're there. We're at the point where love is now. So, I feel like it makes sense to me that love was like a artist in a room with a blank canvas. Love didn't have to create, but love kind of had to create. Like to fulfill itself. If that makes sense. To like
So love is
evolve
selfish
itself.
in some ways.
It's not selfish. Is it selfish for you to write a song because you're in a room with a guitar?
In some ways.
Why?
Because it makes me feel good. Makes me proud of
To
myself.
do something to make you feel good, is that wrong? Or is that selfish?
No, but it seems like to create an entire world of people and
If I go
animals
to
and
the
things.
gym, if I go to the gym to make myself ultimately a better, more well-rounded person, um, is that selfish? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm asking.
No, it's not. It just seems like I get what you're saying. I mean, if we're made in God's image, I mean, I do think God is
Imagine
an artist.
sitting around all the time. I mean, as a creator, I feel like when I'm not creating, I'm wasting my life away.
Yeah,
My dad
I
used
feel
to.
the
The
same
reason
way.
I don't like taking naps is because when I used to take naps when I was a kid, my dad would always wake me up and say, "Wake up, you're gonna sleep your life away." And that was the scariest thing he could ever say to me. And I was like, I'm gonna sleep my life away. So
It's weird to think that you spend half of your life completely.
I wish we didn't have to sleep, man.
unconscious.
Because then we'd have
Yeah.
like twice our life.
Yeah, you don't have to. You just that's what drug addicts do.
That's not true. The longest person to stay awake, I think, was like 11 days.
Yeah,
And he
no,
died.
You would die. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Which is
Isn't that
also
crazy? It's crazy how much.
It's kind of
sleep's
scary.
its whole
It's
thing,
kind of
man.
scary
Sleep
how
and
small an
dreams,
amount of
yeah.
time that is. 11 days is not very long.
Yeah, that's
Considering
true.
that I've pulled 2 all-nighters before, that's like almost getting there.
Yeah,
So I was like 9 days from being dead.
yeah.
Of course, I
Yeah.
couldn't stay awake for 11 hours.
It'd be a miserable way to commit suicide. I feel like.
Oh my god, I can't even imagine having to stay
Because I
awake.
feel like the 7th day you just start losing your mind
Right.
completely and completely out of touch with reality, and
Yeah.
dreams would just start overcoming your.
This is
your
making me
perception
really
and-
uncomfortable. I'm gonna be honest. I feel so thrown off. I hope I'm not saying too much, but I feel really thrown off because it's nighttime.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because this is. I mean, my last podcast, The Best Picture Brothers, was always at night. We never, or I think we did one day podcast. But I got very used to like winding down for the day and then getting into the podcast mode. But this one has always been like either we did one at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Like it's always been kind of early in the morning, and now I've had my whole day today, so it's kind of throwing me off. How do you feel?
I feel good, but I'm a night owl. I think
Right.
this is the time of day that I come alive anyway. So.
I went to sleep so early last night. I went to sleep at
Not
like 9:30 because I had so many Skittles that I wanted to die. So I don't think I'm gonna eat Skittles anymore. Skittles?
That's not a temptation for me.
That's not what I meant. I meant Smarties is what I meant to say.
No.
I'm thrown off
That
because this night podcast thing. What was I talking about? Love? But anyway, so love.
We were talking about the beginning. Yeah, I interrupted you. You said artist. He's an artist in a room.
I want to
With a
clarify
canvas.
that I don't think it was any kind of selfish thing. It was just like when
yeah,
I
no, I
said
don't think it's selfish.
when
It
I'm
just
not
seems like it's
creating-
weird to create an entire world and civilization and all that stuff.
because
Just
you're
because it's sitting in a
humanizing
room or
love
whatever.
though. Also, love is all knowing, much more knowing than you and I. So we can't really understand completely why love did it. If I'm right,
Sure.
say I'm right.
I need to just quit interrupting you and let you finish your theory. You go ahead.
Just shut up.
Alright.
No, it's okay. But I think
Truth is, I don't know either.
love really
So-
love created us because like to fulfill itself, to kind of evolve, I guess. Love was like this, like imagine love going through evolution almost. Like love started off as this concept which kind of became consciousness, I believe, and started creating and like getting bigger and bigger, and love created the universe, and then we are this one like really important, I think we're like the center of the painting, I guess, like Earth and humanity, I think. You know, because you might create a painting of like a bowl of fruit, but the bowl of fruit might be in like a house or whatever. So you have a house in the background, and that's the universe. But we are the bowl of fruit, and that should be a T-shirt.
Okay.
But or a tattoo. We are the bowl of fruit. No, but I think love created this beautiful picture of kind of like when it says that we were made in His image. I believe that is the interconnectedness of us. So it's like how I can feel love for you, and you can feel love for me. You can feel love for your dog, or you can feel love for like a piece of art that you see, and you can like experience something. You can. It's crazy because like you can watch a movie or read a book written by someone who's been dead for 100.
Yeah, that kind of interconnectedness.
It's
is pretty
crazy.
amazing
You can be
to think
connected with
about,
someone who's been
yeah.
dead for so long.
Well, and to pick somebody's brain who's been gone.
Right.
For
It's crazy to me. Like, I think about
years.
the cool thing to me about
decades,
these comic books that I have behind you
centuries.
is like the idea that these are super old and like they're not in that bad shape. So that means that every person who owned them, for whatever reason, took pretty good care of them. So they were probably important to multiple people because
So
comic
they've
books
had a
get sold
loved
a lot.
history, and that's kind of
Right. So they've had a loved history from multiple people.
Right.
Probably tens, maybe even more than that, of people who really cared about, I don't know, the concept of Spider-Man, which I share. And so I think it's so cool to hold in my hands the same thing that all these people before me that I will probably never know has held.
Yeah.
And so it's this interesting kind of feeling of interconnectedness that I feel like when I'm like holding it in my hands.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
we touched on sort of the same topic last time when we were talking about things and the value that is held within things and how
You know what we never got to last
time
time?
and perception change the value of things and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I watched, this is maybe, it's not a goofy reference, I think it's a pretty dope movie, but I watched Indiana Jones
Which one?
last night, the one with Shia LaBeouf, so the newest one.
Ooh, everyone hates that one.
I still thought it was good.
I thought it was good too. I'm gonna be completely honest
But
about it.
the
It was nowhere near as good as the other three.
we did also watch one of the old ones.
The other three are incredible. I think
And they're great.
the second one is my favorite.
But I thought that this one carried on the same good theme, you know, it wasn't like I mean, it was as good, I think, or maybe slightly less good than the other ones.
It's okay. No one is on board with you. I agree with you. I think it's not bad.
Yeah.
But no one is on board with you. But you can tell me what you were thinking about.
Anyways, what the analytical part of me, because when I watch movies, I'm constantly just, you know, God is, it's not really like God's always on my mind, man, but it's just the, you know, these deep questions of life. Like I said, when you see God, you can't stop seeing Him.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the filter that my brain uses, and so as I'm watching this movie, I'm seeing more and more interesting things that remind me of God, or
So like what specifically?
well, he's an archaeologist, right? So they talked briefly about the value in all those things, you know, and they go at the end, they go to this room in Egypt or something like that, because it's about alien crystal skulls, right?
Right.
But anyways, the point I'm making is that there's this room towards the end where it's got artifacts from all around the world, from every single different like century and time period.
Yeah.
And they walk in there and they're like, holy cow, like this room is overwhelmingly amazing just because there's so much stuff in here. But at the time, those artifacts or whatever, like in their century or in the right place, people are like, oh, that's cool or whatever. And, you know, I'm sure they showed them affection or those items, but they, with time, the history that the way that those people treated those objects times time amplified the value of them, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting to think that people who were like archaeologists or even, you know, us, our own, all these knickknacks that you have around you. Have you ever thought about how many things you own? Little and big.
Yeah.
How many things you own? It's crazy. And
I don't
each
think
one of them has a
I've
little
thought
bitty
about
story.
like a number, but I have
I mean, I
obviously-
can't come up with a number. It's a lot.
Well, I
You
obviously
know,
like
every pair of
looking at
socks, every little knickknack,
Yeah.
ring, you know, hairband,
Mhm.
every little thing that you own has some sort of significance to you because of the time you bought it, the time it entered your life, the time it'll exit your life, and how you treat that thing.
I guess that depends on how you define significance.
Well, it's just that it's like they don't have a life until they're viewed, until they're
Because-
observed or owned, you know, and then they somehow it's just crazy how much things impact you,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I was trying to look for something that
Things.
doesn't have significance. I mean, I couldn't really find one.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. It's everything. You bought this mug for a reason, right? You went out of your way to buy this mug.
Yeah.
And I remember at Christmas you wanted, was it a coffee maker or was it just coffee?
It was a coffee mug.
It was a coffee
We were playing
mug.
White Elephant, and I got a coffee mug from someone. And they were upset about it. They took it right back because I didn't know the rules of White
Right.
Elephant, and I was like, oh man.
Yeah. See, there's a story behind everything, including
So
this
out of spite, I
meaningless
went and
mug.
bought that mug
Right.
because I wanted a coffee mug.
Yeah, and then before the podcast started, we were talking about these things, you know?
Yeah, that's cool because I got this little piano coaster.
And I feel like there's some things that you can look at in other people's world. Like you can walk into somebody's house and pick out items that you know are like, oh, that's very meaningful to them. You know, like it's just that they carry a certain energy with them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And that energy, I feel like, is like love. Like
love
flowing
over time
through everything.
But that thing on its own is just a thing. That's what I'm saying, is that
Yeah.
the beautiful significance of it is that the way that we interact with objects in the world literally brings them to life through God.
You know what's
through our
interesting?
consciousness and our perceptions or whatever.
You know what's interesting is we were talking in this series of notes I have from my psychology class, is we talked about sensory adaptation, which is, you know, when you kind of hear something for so long, or you, I mean, we talked about talking about hearing or smelling, but
smelling, you get
I mean, you
get
go
used to it in 30 seconds.
You
or
go into
minute or
someone's
something.
house who has a bunch of cats, and you immediately smell, oh my god, it smells
And then
like
it-
shit in here.
yeah.
But they don't know, because they've been there for so long that their senses adapt.
Well, you adapt though with
Well, the thing is
olfactory
that-
senses within like a minute, I think.
Well, the thing is that your sensory receptors or whatever are sending these signals to your brain, and after a while, your brain's like, okay, we get it, we know, it's not a threat, it's okay.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, we'll stop telling you that, we'll stop telling you it stinks in here, and so you just stop smelling it.
Right.
Like, it's kind of interesting. And the same thing happens with your ears. I noticed Casey, my sister, was getting a tattoo the other day, and I was with her, and it's that little pen is so loud, and I'm in this little room with it, and I got so used to it that I didn't realize as soon as he cut it off, I was like, oh my god, I totally forgot that was even happening. And it's super loud, but I just, like, my senses just stopped telling me it was there.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting. It's like, we talk about it in class when it's like, people will be talking to you forever, and they can tell you're not listening, and so they'll be telling you a really intimate story, and then they'll be like, sex, murder, everything. You're like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, now you're listening?
Right.
You're like, I don't know, I guess suddenly, until it became relevant, I wasn't listening to you.
Right. I think maybe that, well, this is just where my brain is going. Whenever you're kids, you know, that, what did you call it, sensory adaptation?
Yeah.
I think whenever you're a kid, you know, you're way more present because you have less that you're kind of thinking about. You're not trying to figure out the world, you're just exploring. Every moment is new.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that's you living in God, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's you living fully present, fully unashamed of your emotions and of your proclivities and opinions. You're just a kid. You're just throwing yourself into the environment, you know?
Yeah.
And then after a while, you forget how special that present moment is, and it no longer becomes relevant. And then you're living kind of not a mundane existence. Well, yeah, a mundane existence, and you're kind of absent. You know, we talked a little bit about that, where you're in your head.
It's
you're
like a
not in
metabolism.
reality.
It becomes harder and harder as you get older.
But then when you see God, like I was saying, like
Yeah.
you can't stop seeing God. It changes your perspective. It kind of feels like you wake up a little bit, because you're like, you start looking for things. You're exploring in the world around you, and then you start feeling the connection from your internal world to the external world through the filter of God. And maybe that's what God is.
The thing is, I think we
understanding.
see and look at God all the time. We just don't define it as God, and we don't take note of it.
Yeah.
Like you showed me that TED Talk where that woman had a stroke or whatever.
Yeah.
And she was like, I fell up against this wall, and then I looked at my hand, and I couldn't see my hand. I could see like every little molecule holding the other molecules to make up my hand. It was like I started taking note of everything that's always been around me.
Taylor is her name.
Yeah.
I just remember.
But she was like, of everything that's been around me, like, I just haven't taken note of it. But when you start taking note of it, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about God, and I still think it's sometimes it's very prevalent, or present. I think I used the word present.
He used it, right?
But sometimes, if you could, like, just point that thing at you, just turn it. Yeah, there you go, just like that. But sometimes I feel like to really be in the zone and kind of feel God around me, I have to really get into it. And so I think it's like when you're exploring and trying to better yourself and trying to like plug yourself in, I almost think, to this interconnectedness. What I would say a big part that has been helping me lately is, I guess, reading in general, but I've been reading Jordan Peterson's book, and it's all kind of about this like taking note of the world around you and kind of understanding.
Right.
And
when you see it on the road.
Yeah, so when I was reading this book, I would go to like a coffee shop or just outside, like early in the mornings and stuff like that, and I would listen to classical music, and it'd just be on this beautiful day, and I would just be thinking like about the world around me, and I'm trying to learn more about it, reading this book, and I would just like feel it, like I would feel like it felt like I could see the interconnectedness, like being in a coffee shop, I could look up from the book, see the interactions going on, and it's almost like seeing like the air around them or something like that. It's like I could see the love flowing between people.
Yeah, it's like a symphony of people's interactions.
Yeah, it's like I would equate seeing it
Watching
to like a
people
daydream. Obviously, I wasn't like having hallucinations, but I would equate seeing it to like some kind of daydream thing. Like I could see, I had a layer on top of reality that was just I could see inside of what was happening, I guess.
Okay.
It's really interesting, and I wrote a bunch of poems during this time, and I want to put them in a secret collection.
Where do you think that your creativity
And they don't
comes
sound
from?
anything like my other poems that I've tried to write, because I think, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but what'd you say, sorry? What do you think?
What is the most creative endeavor that you're proud of? What's the thing that you've created that you're most proud of?
The one thing I've created that I'm most proud of?
Or most connected to is probably a better question.
Most connected to? I don't know. I always...
Something that feels really personal. Like last time you had brought up that it feels like you're trapped in a box, or like a glass case, and people can see you, but they can't hear what you're trying to say.
Oh, right.
And
that was a
that
good
art
thing.
is kind of the only way that people will be able to hear your message.
Yeah,
And
I
I get that, but which one do you think, which thing that you've written or done has gotten that message
Has gotten
as
it to
clearly
people the
across, in your opinion? One that you feel like, okay, I articulated that feeling and, that idea the best that I possibly could.
I don't know. I think I'm getting better all the time, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I can feel where it does connect, and I can feel where it doesn't. I mean, it's like when a comedian makes a comedy special, and when he makes a joke, like they test out the jokes for months before they make a comedy special.
Of course. Yeah.
And you tell a joke, people laugh, you feel that connectedness, and you're like, they understand me. They like feel what I'm trying to say through this abstract way of stand-up, this art. But then sometimes you'll say a joke that really means something to you, and you think it's hilarious, and you'll say it, and no one laughs, and you're like, man, like, dang it, like I can, because that's what, and I'll go into what I was saying, I forgot about that, but yeah, I feel like I have kind of a weird sense of humor, and, I mean, obviously I think it's normal because it's mine, but
Right.
I feel like
Because you're stuck with it.
what I've noticed, yeah, I'm stuck with it. What I've noticed is when I talk to people, a lot of people don't get what I'm saying half the time. And
Yeah, I just tuned it out.
I remember
typically.
I dated this girl in high school, and I can't remember what we were talking about. I speak in such generalities. I can't speak, but see, it's hard for people to understand me.
Yeah.
No, but I said something, and I remember her going, "What?" And I said it again, and she went, "Oh, that's hilarious," or something like that, like genuinely. And then like a month later or something, when we were actually dating, somehow it came up again, and she was like, "Yeah, I never understood what the hell you were talking about." And I was like, why did you act like you did? And she was like, "I don't know, like I don't know, I just thought I'd go along with it or whatever." I was like, that's so and I found that that's the case a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, people just don't understand me, and they'll just go with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I clarify, they'll be like, have you ever said
That's
something
why it's
like,
hard for me to take compliments.
have you ever
about
said
music and
something,
stuff
I know,
like that.
have you ever said something like, "Hey, your shirt looks really nice today"? Someone will go, "What?" And you go, "Your shirt looks really nice today." And they go, oh, okay, thank you. And you go, "Did you hear what I said?" "No, what did you say?" And you go, "Your shirt looks really nice today." "Oh, okay, goodness gracious. I thought you said that I'm an idiot." And he was like, "Why did you say thanks? Like, why did you just pretend?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "I just didn't want to deal with it, I guess."
Social norms they just destroy honesty between
It
people.
just hurts me. I'm just like,
I have
people-
so much distrust for anybody who makes an effort to
people-
come up to me and
I
say
know.
like, man, I really enjoyed your show. I'm always like, you went way out of your way. It's either very genuine or you feel very compelled to do this because you hated it. You know, like, oh God, this guy's so bad. He needs some encouragement, and you're like, what out of the way?
I feel like it just frustrates me. So that's what I say, and I feel like I have a weird sense of humor that people just don't get my jokes a lot. And so, like I said, I feel like I'm in a glass box and people can see me, but like they can't understand what I'm saying. Like I'm trapped in my head, and I'm trying so hard to get to other people, but I can't. Like
Yeah.
through normal speech,
I feel
the
like
English language fails me and does not allow me to transfer my thoughts.
right, and that's where I
feelings.
think art comes in, is where language stops. It's like art is, well, for me, it's songwriting.
It's this
obviously.
loophole. It's this abstract way of explaining a feeling or a complete. I think feeling, really. I would say thought, but
Yeah.
I think feeling.
I was thinking about it the other day at a stoplight randomly.
Yeah.
It was like one of those things I noticed, and then it like overwhelmed me with how much we take for granted. So the thought was, okay, Jordan Peterson talks a little bit about how, you know, in his timeline, the beginning people didn't use their vocal cords for speech because there wasn't language, obviously, that had to be developed.
Yeah.
Once they learned that they could use that, imagine feeling like, I mean, you talk about being in a box. Imagine not being able to communicate. Nobody's ever communicated before. You just make sounds or click rocks together or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the gift of you collectively deciding, oh, we can use this to talk and share ideas, and that, I'm sure, just like propelled the human species. But then beyond that, not only can we talk, we can sing. Like that just that thought hit me.
We're slowly
like,
creating more and more
cow.
ways to communicate with each other. And
We are able to not only just say words, but we can create melodies that are just straight up connected to our inner worlds.
Art is kind of like
to communicate something other than language. That's amazing to me.
I think art is like the most evolved version of communication.
Yeah, it is. It's like I can't explain. Like we're having this conversation for an hour and a half or whatever, and some of these thoughts could not fully be formed in that time period. But if I were to sing you a song about an exact emotion or feeling that I was having, and you played through that song 3 or 4 times, really listening to the lyrics and the melody and analyzing, like, why did he choose this melody?
That's why songs
why
are 3
did he
minutes
choose
and
this
podcasts
chord?
are 3 hours.
Right. Why did he choose this melody? Why did he choose this chord? What do these lyrics mean? What could they mean if I put myself in his shoes? And then you would be able to understand my disposition a whole hell of a lot better than me telling you it for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that to me is fascinating. It is kind of a loophole in language, you know. It's an upgraded version. And I think that that's why people are drawn to art, is because it rapidly connects you with a feeling or emotion, some present moment that you experience. So the artist, right? The artist experiences one present moment, one feeling and one overwhelming sense of something.
Yeah.
And then they articulate that in a package and they give it to the world. And the world is able to look at it and be like, I've experienced that moment.
Yeah.
And so you're connected to a moment. And art, I think, is kind of a bridge to God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it is one of the only ways to communicate the present moment.
Art can be a bridge to God.
Yeah, it can also just be.
Well, I think art is a bridge. It would be the best way to say it, because art could be a bridge to destruction.
Jordan Peterson describes it as a bridge between the known and unknown, or something like that.
Well, right. I mean, well, you think of what they showed it. It was one of the first American films. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like pro-slavery, and it was like before the Civil War, or not before the Civil War. I can't remember what it was, but it was like this film where like these black guys were doing all this horrible stuff, and they were portraying Klansmen as like heroes or whatever, and it was this horrible, horrible thing. We watched it in history class in high school, and they showed it in Black Klansman, which is a wonderful Spike Lee movie. Have you seen it yet?
No, it's on Redbox. I
It's
wanted to get
a
it.
pretty dang good movie. And Spike Lee is just fantastic.
Is that the one? Sorry to interrupt. Is
No,
that
you're
the one where he's acting out a phone call, or not a phone call?
Yeah, the basic. I don't want to spoil too much, but the basic.
He's
premise,
a telecommunicator.
He's like the
it's
first
called.
black cop in this area, and he goes under, or he
Does he have a
accidentally
white guy
starts
voice
to go.
or something
yeah,
like
he's
that?
a white guy
Okay.
voice, and so
That
he
looked really
calls
funny.
the Klan, and like enlists himself or whatever. But you know he's black, obviously, so he's got to get someone else to go for him. But it's a great movie.
It's a comedy, right?
I mean, well, it's a true story. So I mean,
Okay.
it's pretty funny because Spike Lee is just good at writing, but it's a serious story.
Okay. Yeah, I've been wanting to see it.
Yeah, it's not like a parody or anything. It's not like silly. Like it's serious, but it's pretty
Right.
funny.
Okay. Cool.
Anyways, no. So it's this propaganda piece. I can't remember what it is to save my life, but probably anybody who's taken history in high school would. If you looked it up, you'd know it.
Okay.
But it's horrible. It's this horrible piece of work. You watch it, you feel really uncomfortable, and it's just like, it's like a bridge to
Well, even that though is the present moment of
pure
somebody's.
evil. Yeah, but I don't think that's God.
Well, no, I don't think it's God. So I get what you're saying there is that it's a bridge.
It's a bridge. Which
It's
can
a
also
bridge
be,
to the
it
present
can be used
moment.
in,
I think
it can
it's
be
a
used
bridge
for evil.
to some present moment.
Yeah.
And if the individual writing it is an evil person or living out an evil thought or dwelling on an evil fantasy and writing about that, it can be a bridge to that too.
Yeah.
And that's why you can feel connected to it and it overcomes you with like this, oh God. Like,
There was
there's some things you watch that literally just make your skin crawl.
There's a documentary. It's a short film documentary. It's just basically what do they call it? When you take like an old song or an old something and you redo it, but you make it better. Remastered. It's basically a remastered, really old film. It was actual film from a meeting of the Nazi Party at Madison Square Garden in like the 30s or something like that. It's this short documentary, and I watched it at a film festival a few months ago, and it just sent shivers down my spine. And it was like, it's called A Night at the Garden, and it shows everyone getting there.
It's a very pleasant name for a dark topic, isn't it?
Yeah, and everyone shows up, and it shows everyone, hailing, and he like starts talking, and he's like very confident, the speaker, whoever it was, talking about the Nazis and how the Jews are like evil and they're gonna like take care of them once and for all, like all this horrible stuff. But he's like really good at talking. You can like feel the evil in him, and there was some guy who ran up and tried to like hit him or something, ran on stage, and they had people taking him away, and then the guys who were taking him away were like ripping his clothes off, and they were all laughing at him, and they like took him like away into like behind the stage or whatever, and everyone was cheering when they took him away. It is like,
it's wild.
Yeah, it's disgusting, and it's super super dark. I think it's important, and I imagine the reason that the guy made that as a short documentary was it's important to know your enemy, I guess.
Isn't
it's
it weird?
important to remember that so it doesn't happen again.
Right. It's weird that the way you empathize with that, the way I empathize with that is that it's so dark because you see such a large group of people who are so far from morality.
Yeah.
Like they're so far gone from that sort of connected.
Well, that's the huge
morality
thing. That's the huge thing. It's like
that it's scary. You're like, holy crap! There can be a large group of people, an entire civilization, that has a mindset so detached from anything good. Like,
well, that's the huge thing. Is Jordan Peterson and I, and hopefully a lot of people don't agree with moral relativism, which is if you've ever seen Into the Woods, which you have, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Well, in the end of it, and I don't know if this is what they were going for, but this is what I always think of when I hear moral relativism. And that's a good way to define it, I think. But in the end, she's like comforting him, and she's like basically saying that there's no such thing as like true good or true evil. And she's like, you decide what's good, you decide what's right, or whatever. But that's not obviously the case.
Moral relative.
Yeah, it's like everything's relative. What's good, relative. What's good
relative
to you might not
yeah.
be good to me. What's bad for you might not be bad
That's
for me.
kind of like the
good and bad are all relative, but it's not true.
No, there's guiding principles that make sense.
Yeah,
for
what Jordan
everybody.
Peterson says is why he talks about reading the Gulag Archipelago so much. Is he says when you read about the horrible things they did at in the Holocaust at the concentration camps and stuff, they would do things that they would have. Obviously, they shaved their heads to get completely rid of individuality and assigned a number to them. They would have people completely naked and starving take a big tire from one side of the camp and drag it all the way across to the other side. And once they did that, they would have him drag it all the way back. And he said that was evil for the sake of evil. And there is nobody, no skeptic, no moral relativist, nobody who can define that as anything other than evil. That is the big thing that they have no argument for, because that's so obviously evil, which proves that there has to be good, because good is anything that is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Because that is obviously missing the mark, as sin is
missing the mark.
Missing the mark. But no, but I think it's good to know that, because what he said is, he talks about evil and how to stop evil. And everyone wants to say, I would never do anything like that. Mm-hmm. And he says, like, when you talk about the Holocaust, everyone thinks, well, I'm Oscar Schindler, and I'd be saving all the Jews. It's like, really? You'd really be doing that if you were in that situation. You'd be risking your life and other people's lives to save these people.
It's like, no, that's stupid. And if you didn't do it, then someone would kill you and overtake that position and
right.
do it.
Right.
The odds of that happening are zero.
He said, here's the way you stop the Nazis, at least right now, is you have to realize that you have that in you. To do something that horrible, and not only do something that horrible, but actually get to the point where you enjoy it. He says you have to realize that the Nazis were you, and you have to make the conscious decision not to do that again.
Right.
Which I think is really interesting, because so many people will be like, well, I would never do something like that.
Right.
But you can't think that, because then you become blind to it. It's like sensory adaptation. Yeah. You become so blind to something because you just throw it out of your mind. You think that's not useful information.
Well, so I was telling you before the podcast that I wrote this song recently about the 7 deadly sins, and it's called Ramble On.
Oh yeah, did you say that before the podcast?
I said it as it was starting, maybe, I don't know,
before we started.
Just to cover it again.
It's called Ramble On, keep going.
So I did some...
Go ahead and ramble on.
Okay, I did some research on the 7 deadly sins, and then, formed these short verses out of them, because there's 7 verses. I had to kind of compress them so that it still stayed under, 4 minutes, so it wasn't just too much. Because at a certain point, people just lose interest.
Yeah.
But
unless you be like whatever his name is, who wrote Hallelujah with like 87 verses or whatever.
Yeah, and they condensed it later.
Yeah, it didn't get famous until they made it shorter.
Yeah. I'm
sure it's a beautiful song that no one wants to listen to because it's so long.
Yeah, I've looked into some of the other verses and they're phenomenal.
Well, it's never been recorded in its full length, right?
There's a live version, but I don't know if it's the whole song.
It couldn't be. That'd have to be like an hour long.
I think there is, though.
Because the verses last like a minute.
Yeah.
Anyways, keep going. Sorry.
Anyways, so what it got me thinking about is, because when I'm trying to write, I try to write from a personal perspective. I also do some character writing in situations like that. So in this one, it's irrelevant to the song completely because it doesn't mention it at all. But in my brain, what made sense to me is there's this orphan in like the 1700s or something like that, just walking around, discovering life on his own, completely unguided by parents or morals, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's going through these 7 sins, and then learning the only thing that keeps me going is I just ramble on, So the tagline is, God bless the sinner in the road I ramble on. It's like, I'm going to ramble on, I'm going to keep rambling on, I'm a losing bet, but I'm going to still keep moving, God bless this road, and all the mistakes I make along the way, and then it keeps naming the sins. Anyways, with that being my perspective, though, I kind of got into the headspace of this character, and then I also started realizing...
Can I ask a question about it?
Yeah.
So you said... So it's basically the idea is that I'm going to keep trying to be better.
Right.
Right?
So you hit a wall...
I know I'm gonna mess up, but... I'm going to keep going no matter what. I'm not going to quit the fight.
Right. So we talked a little bit in the last podcast about having a goal that you're aiming towards.
Yeah.
And you're bumping around on the way towards that goal, and that's the essential part.
I have an interruption I want to throw in that I think a huge problem with the dogma of Christianity is that it doesn't seem appealing to a non-Christian. At least in the concept of we can't do this list of things, but a lot of those things on the list, you're like, oh, not only have I already done those things, but
I like them.
Even if, well, I like them, but also, no matter how hard I try it, I'm almost certainly going to do one of them again.
Right, and then it's like you're a failure from the start. Yeah.
I'm going to burn forever.
Yeah, that's not really an appealing
Well,
thing.
I might as well just
why would
do
you want
whatever I
to?
want
Why would
anyways.
you want to believe that? Yeah.
I might as well just do whatever I want anyways, like I was doing. I was having more fun.
It's like you jump into a realm of higher stakes. Where
It's like if I'm
I
gonna
could go to
burn
heaven or I could
either
go to
way.
hell.
But
Yeah.
the point
It's
is
hard to
that,
wanna
that a lot of
adopt
people
that.
forget is like a lot of people. I remember when I was growing up, believed that you could lose your salvation or whatever, which seems like a bananas concept. Which is like, you become saved and accept Jesus into your heart, and then if you screw up too many times, you could probably lose your salvation again. It's like, oh my God, really?
Right.
And there's this verse that talks about grace through faith. It's not works that save you.
We could
it's
talk
Jesus.
about baptism here in a minute if you want, because I've got some interesting. I don't know if they're interesting,
Well,
but
the
I've
whole
thought
point-
about that more than I've ever thought
The
about
whole
it.
point is that I
Actually.
think even within Christianity, it's not supposed to be like this, but over years it's become like this.
Right.
And
It's
and
just
people-
tradition. It's like you go through
People
these
kind
steps.
of instill
you're
this
good.
thing in these little kids and in other people looking from the outside looking in, which is that you have to live by these rules or you're going to hell.
Right.
Well, obviously I could never do that. Like, I could try my hardest, but I'm
Right.
gonna mess up at some point. Everybody
Right.
does. You could be the best driver in the whole world,
Still getting
probably gonna get pulled over at least once.
Right. Sure.
Like, if you're driving every day, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're gonna be pulled over once because people make mistakes.
Right.
And so it just doesn't look very appealing. If you make a mistake, you're going
Yeah.
to hell.
I'm really glad that I fell away from religion for a
But
long
that's
time.
the good thing is
Because I
that
gained that outside perspective and made me
Right.
go, yeah, I don't really want to be a part of that. But I do think there's something to this, and I dug
I was
at
trying
it
to say
from
that's the good thing
different
about your
realms.
song though is that the point is the point is
Yeah, it's not about religion, it's about spirituality.
the point is
like
not
self-love.
about you have to follow these rules, you're going to hell. The point is I'm trying my best to find the beauty and to seek the beauty and to not sin and miss the mark of beauty that I'm shooting
aiming
for.
for, right.
Yeah.
So in the song, though, as I was going through the character doing all these things, and I started empathizing, I started thinking about my own life and realizing that I've done every single one of the 7 deadly sins. You know, like I've gone through all of them, and I think that on some level everybody has.
What are they in a row? I haven't seen the movie 7 in a while.
I don't know if they're, I don't know if there's a specific order, but there's lust, greed,
Remember sloth,
sloth, yeah,
glutton,
gluttony,
yeah.
pride. Did I already say that one? I don't think so. And then,
That's why school pep rallies always made me really uncomfortable. I'm gonna be
Envy.
completely honest.
yeah, envy and
They'd have like pride on the wall, bigger than I was, and I'd be like, "That's one of the 7 deadly sins."
yeah,
You should just put lust on the wall.
right.
Like, have some school spirit, show some school lust.
The point was
Okay.
with this song though was that the general road that I think you should be on is the one that includes mistakes towards something better, right?
Yeah.
But I think that and this is all tying back to the Gulag Archipelago and what.
Have you read that yet? Because I ordered it and it comes in tomorrow.
No, it's supposed to be a pretty tough read.
I'm
That
so
doesn't mean
sad.
I'm not going to read it, but
Well, no, he said it's not a tough read like intellectually. It's tough
Emotionally.
because it's so
Yeah, it's so
emotional
in-depth.
and yeah. Which you
let
might
me,
have
let me
meant.
try to tie
You
this
might
up,
have
though.
meant I was clarifying for anybody listening. To
Right,
this.
sure. So what I was saying though is that the point of that song was, I guess, hope. I guess that you're on the road towards something, towards a brighter
I wrote
future,
a
towards
poem.
beauty or whatever,
Along the same lines recently that
And
you
you-
haven't heard.
and you knock into those sins along the way.
Yeah.
But as I was thinking about these sins in depth, I realized it would be so easy to just go down that road. Just that one road. Like, if I just wanted to be a prideful person, that becomes my filter, my perception, who I am, everything, and then I'm on that road for forever. And I'm no longer on this road, I'm on an off-road.
Mhm.
Same with lust, or same with gluttony, or sloth, or greed, or envy. Any of those things, they just become a road where it becomes your filter, and after too long, it's just who you are. And
Yeah.
it's super hard to get off, after you've traveled this far on one road of that sin or whatever,
Yeah.
and then try to aim yourself back that direction. It's super difficult. So to monitor yourself as you're going along the road was kind of the point. Like, I'm gonna mess up, it's fine, but at least I'm not just going down this road forever, And so what I was gonna say with that ties back to Jordan Peterson saying that we all can access that evil at some point, is if you go down any of those roads for long enough, you totally disconnect from the fact that you're doing any of those things.
Mhm.
It just becomes who you are.
Yeah.
in a way of life, you know?
Yeah.
And it'd be the same thing for violence or anything. I bet that you get, you know, if you're one of the soldiers that were shooting women and children and stuff like that, on some level, I'm sure they had an enormous amount of pride because of the power that comes with, I'm above you, I'm taking your life, all that stuff. And it's just one step at a time they went down the wrong road. And that's easy to do for anybody. And I think that if you're able to recognize yourself as somebody who has gone down that road and maybe strayed back, how far could you have gone down that road, and where could that have led you? How blind could you have been?
C.S. Lewis said, the devil's greatest trick is proving the world, or convincing the world that he didn't exist.
Right.
And when you get in this mindset where you're like,
you just
I
forget
could never
about
do
it.
something like that, then you're like, it's like not exposing yourself to it, so you don't develop an immunity to it because you're not thinking about it, and so you're totally vulnerable to that coming up. Like, so when whenever
once you realize it's too late.
Yeah, whenever like trials and tribulations come upon you, you'll have weak character and you won't be able to sustain, and you could become evil and do really horrible things.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was really gonna say something.
It's alright.
You were talking. Oh, do you want me to? I could read that that poem that's kind of similar to your thing, your song.
Yeah.
It's really short. Is the reason I bring it up. It's called "The End That Never Ends." I think. Here it is. The end that never ends. Okay, you ready? Prepare yourself to be mind blown. This was my God thing. I wrote this in a God moment. So I don't take credit for this.
Sorry.
So it says, beauty is the meaning, and beauty sees no end. The sentence, God is beautiful, is redundant. The question, what is the meaning, should read simply beauty. Beauty is a never-ending chasm that stretches farther than the imagination will go. Beauty is abundant. Never give up the fight in searching for beauty. No matter how much suffering has beat you down, just keep searching and look deeper. You'll find the beauty, I promise. And when you get there, keep searching. There's more to come. Beauty is its own end that never ends. Look around. Isn't it beautiful? That's it.
I like it, man. That reminds me, and I think that's true from what I understand of it.
Yeah.
First time around. When me and Sarah went to New Mexico, there was we stayed at this place where there was this, so it was on this farm.
I was drinking coffee and I just switched to Diet Pepsi, and I gotta tell you, my mind doesn't know what to do because it looks the same.
Yeah, it's weird to drink cold drinks out of a mug.
Yeah, that was weird.
Anyways,
Sorry,
we were.
you went to New Mexico.
It's okay. I'll never finish a story.
Sorry, keep going.
So we were in.
Anyway, so I got this mug. No, that's okay.
Okay. We were in New Mexico, right outside of Santa Fe.
Right.
And this lady and her husband, which her husband was of some sort of tribe. I don't remember which one it was.
Is this the lady that you stayed at the Airbnb?
Yeah, that's what it
is. That what you just said?
Yeah, I just said
I'm really sorry.
Anyway, I think I may have told you this story briefly, but we earlier talked about how there's items that you see that you can tell have meant a lot to the person who owns them. This was a place where you walked in and you feel like the whole room was just filled with love, and like they valued everything they owned.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this tiny little farm that had like 3 goats, 2 horses, a couple chickens, just like a tiny little space, like half an acre maybe, not even that.
Yeah.
And they also had this separate room, which was like she called it something. It was essentially like a little log cabin with a stove in it, and then a center pillar with stairs on it that led to nowhere. But they had trinkets from this guy's tribe that he would dance with. He was like a tribe dancer, which is super cool. And she was a painter, so it was also her art studio. The point of the story is, when we got to talk to her, she was one of those people that was just so connected with the beauty inside of herself.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. She may have been a nervous person. She seemed like she was kind of nervous, but she was. It seemed like she was overall captivated with existence, if that makes any sense. And so her vibe was super pleasant to be around, because you're like, here's somebody who just gets it. They understand that there's beauty all around, and we're lucky to be here, you know.
Yeah.
You just feel that vibe as soon as you got there.
And that's a lot to respect because it takes a lot to get there.
And it does, and she explained some of her journey, which I thought was fascinating. So she was the first ever female fire chief in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
And she was that for like 2 decades, I think, or maybe longer. And she was explaining to us that she's like the sweetest woman, like real timid, not timid, just so dripping with sweetness that I couldn't have imagined her in like combat situations, not only in the situations, but commanding other people within the situations.
Yeah.
But she was talking about it like she just numbed herself to everything that ever happened, like having to tell families that their kids were burned in a fire or like crazy stuff. And when she got out, she told us that she was extremely jaded by everything. She was like, where's the beauty in this world? And so then she had this divine need to find beauty in the world. And so all of her paintings were close-ups of these flowers and anything that she saw that she found beauty in. And for years she literally practiced the art of seeking out beauty and articulating it. Yeah. And that was all just for herself. She didn't sell her art or anything like that. It was just, I crave beauty and I need it, you know. And it turned her entire life around. Yeah. She became the person that super respectful of beauty and things. And then she ended up giving us a painting. She gave us 2 paintings, just because we sang a song for her, and she felt that it connected with the same sort of beauty seeking that she had based her last decade on.
What I would want to say about that is, I feel like and I don't mean to shit on Christianity. I grew up Christian, and I don't see anything wrong with that. And it's hard to even say that I'm not a Christian, because I still agree with a lot of the things. I just think traditionally it's gotten stale.
I don't agree with what it's become.
It's kind of gotten stale in some places because they or dusty because they refuse to like polish and adapt, because they're like, I think they're scared to. They're scared to look at anything and question anything because they've been told the same thing since they grew up.
Well, at this point, it's tied to their ego.
Right.
It's tied to their identity.
Right.
I remember whenever I fell away from Christianity, and fell away is kind of a funny word because it was really just bitterness and resentment that had built up over a long time, and I started realizing that everything I stood on was something that had holes throughout everything, because I didn't stand on it for myself.
Sand, man.
I didn't stand on it because it was something I found to be true. I stood on it because everyone told me it was true, you know. And it just, I think it leaves room for creating bitterness and resentment.
Isn't it kind of, okay, I don't mean to be creepy, but sometimes when I think about church when I was a little kid and what we did, it kind of freaks me out.
Yeah.
It feels very cultish, because I was just thinking about that song, The Wise Man Builds His House Upon the Rock or whatever, and that's a pretty basic concept, but there were more specific concepts that they taught us in these little songs that they would sing, and they would smile, we do these hand gestures, and I was like, thinking about it, I'm like, this is brainwash, and you are brainwashing. Like, there is no room for any kind of
free thought. Yeah,
no,
it's like
this is the way it is, and then you can play with your toys, and you're like, okay, this is the way.
Get through this dance and back to the sandbox.
That's what Bill Burr was talking about. He's like, say what we say when we say it. And then he was like, that's what they all grow up learning, and then they get into the real world and realize that people have problems with that, and they don't know what to do. And he's like, so don't get mad at them for thinking this, because they're like, what? That's what I've always, what?
Yeah. But what I think the point I was going to make was that whenever I fell away from it, or whenever I realized that there was holes in my, theology, or false theology, I had kind of an ego death of sorts, where I didn't know who I was, I didn't know what I wanted to stand on, and that was a necessary pain to have, because it forced me to look real deep inside and go, what are things that are fundamentally true, not only for me, but for anybody who is living any sort of life? What are things that could help anybody get out of any situation and find that road?
Yeah.
that is leading towards beauty on some level.
I want to clarify. I think there's nothing wrong with being a Christian. I think.
Oh yeah, I don't either.
And I'm not trying to
Yeah, I've got a lot of
to
opinions
push
about
out any Christians. Yeah, I have
Some
a
good,
lot
some bad.
of friends, a lot of family that is completely Christian, goes to church all the time.
Right.
And I'm not even saying that I'm not. I just hesitate to call myself one because of the bad things that's been associated with.
Well, yeah, and I struggle to associate myself with it too, but it's only because of my past with it. Like the last time I called myself a Christian was during that time before the ego death,
Yeah.
where I was defined by rules that I was told,
But
not by rules
what a Christian
that I
is
sought
and is
out.
supposed to be, I would define myself as. When you think of Christ and who he was and what he
Right.
represents, Christian just means Christ
The
like,
diff-
trying to be like that. And I would say, yeah, that's exactly what I'm
Right.
trying
Well,
to do
so
in
what
my
does that
life.
mean to you? I'm curious. What are you trying to be like Christ?
Christ? Well, Christ is the idea of the perfect person who is always, no matter what trials come his way, keeps seeking the truth, the way,
Right.
and the beauty of everything. Like
Right.
always, no matter what. And another thing that Jordan Peterson talked about was like that's kind of the idea, or a part of the idea of Christ was taking on the sins of the world, understanding that they were me. I have to decide not to do that.
Right.
Like Jesus also, this person who was perfect, had it in him to do horrible things and even feel good about doing them, but he didn't,
Right.
because he had to take on the sins of the world and realize that they were him, and he had to decide not to do that, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
But
interesting.
striving to be that way. I mean, Jesus is just the example of the most beautiful and magnificent way to live your life, and being a Christian, following that path, Jesus is the way that I'm trying to go.
Right.
And when I sin, I miss the mark.
Well, see, if Jesus is the way, and what Jesus did was he was on that road that we were talking about, right?
You can talk about Jesus as a real person or as a concept.
Either way, it works.
It still holds.
No, I agree.
Which is that is the way that if you want to find the ultimate beauty in life, that is the way that you should try to go. But Jesus is interesting because Jesus even called out some of the things that I think that we're trying to say that the church gets stale on. Like when the Pharisees were like, when they were like starving on Sunday and they were like trying to get food, it's like, hey, it's Sunday, you can't be working. It's like you would have people starve before you would break tradition. That's
Right,
like
the priorities
obviously
of
missing the
tradition.
mark. It becomes a
Right.
paradox on itself.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
No, I
there.
was asked that because I've had this conversation with a couple of people, one of which is pretty darn churchy as a rule, and they seem very.
I've talked to a lot of Christians about the kind of thoughts that I've had and the ideas that are forming, and the most reasonable people I know who are Christians aren't like freaked out about what I'm talking about. They're like, yeah, I
No,
totally
they're
see what
not.
you're
Yeah,
saying.
I think that it's kind of whenever you. I just don't think that it's talked about enough within the church. I think that people just
I
kinda,
think the
they
thing
brush
is,
over
is
like
what we were
Jesus is
talking
the
about a long
way, the
time
truth,
ago.
and the light. Just repeat that to anybody who asks.
I think the thing is that what we were talking about a long time ago,
They never
in the
think
beginning of this podcast, when we said,
Well,
like,
maybe they do.
when did you become a serious person, is most people don't. And they don't want to. Because it's easier not to. Like, I was thinking about the concept at the beginning in 7th grade, and it freaked me out for like a year, because it hurts your brain to think about, because you can't wrap your head around it. And so when people normally can't wrap their head around something, they just ignore it. Instead of, like, trying really hard to muster up something and think, because thinking is so, like, scary sometimes.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
people
it
just
is.
don't want to think about it. So they hear what they hear in church, and they
I think
don't.
it's scarier
they
to not
don't-
confront stuff, though.
It-
In my brain.
There's a verse about this in the Bible where it says, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. And so love is that interconnectedness. It's, as I wrote, how do the scent molecules in the air become impulses in our brain? It's like, that's like love. It's taking what's around us through the interconnectedness, pulling it in and making it a part of ourselves. That's everything. That's reality, That's everything. Like, when I feel this, okay, I'm going to read another poem, but it's also short because I really want to talk on it.
Yeah.
It's a poem about God, but it's called God Is. Here we go, I'll read it fast. There's no God? Well, then prove it. You can't, because God is everywhere. God is reality, and God is love. God is an artist. Look around. Isn't it beautiful? There's an infinite beauty in reality, in God. But you say, I just don't think God is real. Do you think? No, listen to me. Do you think? That's God. I think, therefore God is. But you protest, he's not real. I can't see him. I can't hear him. I can't feel him. Yes, you can. Listen. That's him. Look around. That's him. Touch and feel. That's him. Why does God have to be male? Well, she doesn't. He isn't. What is she? She just is. She's the wind brushing your face on a warm day. She is the warm day. He's the moon and the sun and the eclipse. She's the sound of the crying baby in the laundromat, the spinning turbine in the quiet grass in a vacant field. She's the tingly butterfly feeling when you fall in love, and he's the spit flying from your mouth when you're screaming in a fight you can't quite remember how you got into. Do you believe in God? Well, do you cry? Do you lie? Do you grind your teeth? Do you tell the truth? Do you know that you're here? That's God. What is God? God is. And I think that's the end of the poem. But I think that's what I wanted to talk about was when...
Yeah, you read that before. I liked that one.
I feel like I don't know if people understand it as much. Maybe I didn't write it well enough. But when I say the part where it's like, he's not real, I can't... You protest, I can't hear him, I can't see him, I can't feel him. And I say, yes, you can listen. That's him. Like, listening is him. Like, taking what's around you and pulling it inside yourself to become part of you. That's God. This interconnectedness with everything. Everyone is slowly drifting towards one another. Like, it's so beautiful. And I said, look around. See how, like, everything is around you and your eyes are pulling everything in? Like, through this crazy interconnectedness, that's God. Touch. Do you feel how, like, you can feel something with your hand? That's crazy. That's God.
Yeah.
And that was the point I was trying to make with it.
That'd be my goal is, like, if I could live an ideal life, and this is why I believe in or I choose to see God or follow God or live my life for God, because the kind of life I want to live is one that is like my ideal perspective that I want to work towards is one where I have a constant appreciation for experience.
Yeah.
In every way, including touching things.
It's hard, man.
You
That's
live
the goal.
in bliss of
hard.
like, wow, I can. The fact that I'm here, the fact that I have a car that drove me here, that anybody made the car, that years ago somebody had the thought, I want to travel a little bit quicker than horseback.
Yeah.
And they thought, oh, I wonder if I can put things together, and they did, and then over time it accumulated. If we take all this stuff for granted, air conditioning, lights, all that was people acting in God.
Here's the problem.
And I want to be in constant appreciation of that.
That's beautiful, and I think that should be a goal, but here is a problem I think that could exist with that. Even if you try your best and you do succeed with that, is something like sensory adaptation. It's the lack of yin for a yang. When you have too much of one thing, things go wrong.
I disagree, though. I think that this is maybe the exception to that. Living completely in each.
I know. I'm just having a thought. I don't know that I'm right, but it literally as you said that. I'm trying
everything, like if you're a kid, imagine back when you were a kid, and everything was pure experience.
Don't you think?
You're constantly fascinated with new sensory objects, and new experiences, new emotions. Because you can feel happiness when you're 10, and you can feel happiness when you're 20. And it's the same emotion, but it's completely different because you're an ever-changing person. So if you're able to be fully connected in each moment as you're changing and as the world is changing.
I wouldn't say being.
I'm not saying happy all the time. I'm saying that every sadness, even whatever, any experience that you have is different every time you experience it. Even if there's only 4 emotions: anger, happy, sad.
I have said, I do think love transcends yin and the yang, because love is the balance, and so it's like saying, you should have a balance of yin and yang. Love is the balance, so there's no such thing as too much love. It's like, so is there so much thing as too much balance? It's like, that's not a thing. That's
living in pure admiration for your constant surroundings. Isn't that love? Wouldn't that be living in love, living in God, and that'd be finding the balance between chaos and order? And you'd be able to live a life that appreciates chaos and appreciates order, because you're living in constant fascination with pure experience. and pure consciousness. If in
Yeah.
every moment you were able to appreciate that I'm here, I'm feeling this, even appreciate that I'm feeling massive despair right now, or like my dad just died. At least
Okay,
I'm
I understand
here,
what you're
you know,
saying. I
and
agree with
that is the balance between chaos, because you have that thankfulness that says I'm thankful for this experience, and I'm thankful that even though this sucks that my dad isn't dead, everybody, but you know, like in such a scenario like that you're able to express, you know, there is what an amazing thing that I'm here, even though I'm experiencing sadness.
Yeah.
The good thing out of this that comes from this bad experience is that I appreciate so much more all the memories that I had with him or them or whatever it is.
I know you're saying that. I do agree with you.
Yeah, and I think that
I think I
maybe
misunderstood you at first.
maybe that's what you were trying to communicate to my dad the other day, but I think what he was trying to say was that there's always chaos and there's always order.
Well, if you want to talk about that for a second, what I think I've figured out over the few weeks that it happened, and we cut that podcast off a little early just because we were so repetitive.
Right.
Really, it just would have. And I made sure I put in the beginning of your argument. You heard the beginning of it.
Well, it wasn't an argument. It was just
a discussion. Right? I don't think argument necessarily means something negative. People associate with that, but
right. It's just.
I mean, we did have two ideas, and we were trying to come to some kind of resolution.
Right.
But I mean, I don't think it was heated or anything. But the thing is that we were just repetitive, and we both like sometimes when you like can't think of anything else, you just repeat yourself. But we have an audience, and we continue to repeat ourselves, and I'm sure it would have been so frustrating, because if anybody got one of our sides, after like an hour, they'd be like, I already get it, I get it, but they can't talk to us and tell us to stop.
Right.
So, anyways, but the point I think that I finally articulated in my head is, I think your dad, and I'm not saying that he's wrong, but what I think is that he has completely associated ultimate good and ultimate love, what God is truly, with this word called order. But I don't think that that's. I guess it kind of makes sense to.
I think
to
I don't know that
way.
he defined God with it, but
Well,
I think he defined ultimate good with order, and I'm still comfortable with saying that too.
I don't think that's true, because I just think. The whole thing is that God and truth and beauty is in the balance. It's all in the balance. And the whole thing is that you can go too far on one side. When you think about structure and what order can become is outdated traditions and tyranny and stuff like that. And I've done more research on it.
At that point, and my dad said the same thing, it flips over to chaos. It's not just. It's not order just because it's repetitive.
It's not. I wouldn't say it's chaotic. I mean,
it turns into chaos internally as people start becoming numb to the truthful message that the tradition started out of. That's chaos. That's not.
Right, but it's not. Okay.
Seeking order could be ever changing, right? You could have order within that structure of tradition that you're talking about, and then all of a sudden people like you and I recognize, okay, this tradition isn't doing us any good.
I don't think it's about seeking order. I think it's about seeking meaning and beauty. I think that's the point.
Right.
I think the meaning of life.
So you're talking
seeking
about
the meaning and seeking beauty and
I
seeking
agree,
truth, but not necessarily structured. The truth isn't always structured. Sometimes it's vague. Sometimes it's unknown. Sometimes it's chaotic. It's not always perfectly structured and figured out. Sometimes it's very mysterious, and we can't understand it.
So I think that maybe where I get the disconnect in what you're saying is that you're describing order as an outside force and chaos as an outside force, and then you're talking about the way to align yourself. You're talking about from an internal perspective, and I think that, if we're going to define things, we need to talk about one topic, one thing at a time. So if you're going to say it from one perspective, I think the order and chaos that I'm referring to is more the internal battle, right? And you're talking about external events like tradition, people doing one thing over and over. And
well, I think order. The point is.
But the thing is, outside forces, there's always going to be chaos and order, and that you can't control that. What you can control is the order and chaos.
The point is that humanity can pervert anything. I mean, even within yourself, I think obsessive compulsive disorder, that's an example of humanity going too far one way, because we can't handle going too far one way, because love is what keeps us living, and it's in the middle.
Well, define that though.
You
How
get
does
too structured, and you're trying to get everything too lined up and
So-
too ordered.
Let's talk about the internal world of a person with OCD. Do you think that it looks like order to them? I think that's chaos.
The point is that all they do is strive for order, and it's become perverted, and it's gone too far.
They don't strive for order. The obsession with
I think that's exactly what it is.
obsessive compulsive disorder, I'm pretty sure, is more the obsessive
They need something.
nature
They
towards.
need everything in a perfect line, everything perfectly alphabetical,
Well,
everything
sometimes
perfect.
it's not always like that though.
That's what obsessive compulsive disorder is.
They don't need everything in a line. Sometimes it's people wanting to open their drawer 3 times before they shut it finally. And that's not really like in a perfect order or anything. It's what it is that's the chaos of their mind. And I think that that's chaos. That's
Well,
that's not them striving for order. That's them alleviating anxiety with
Well,
motion.
there can be chaos within order and chaos within. And order within chaos. Little pieces of it on either side. But I think the point is it's in the middle of both of them.
So let's go to like an internal experience, what we were talking about earlier, right? So
Just like the chaos within order would be like the serpent in the garden. Even in the perfect Garden of Eden, the serpent was
so
there.
that's an external event though. I'm talking about internally. Are you saying that
You just said that I was talking about internal, and you were talking about external.
No, you said you were talking about external, and I was
Internally, what you should decide to do with your life if you want to stay on the straight and narrow. The idea where the Taoist kind of lines up with Christianity is their idea is to stay on this perfect little line between yin and yang, which is the idea of the narrow path to righteousness.
Mm.
It's staying on this narrow path,
Well, I
and you
think
have
maybe
to
we're
understand
saying
the balance.
the same thing.
And it's like a tightrope.
So you're saying that narrow path in between is love, that balance, right?
Yes.
So I think that to sum it up, I think that we're probably saying the same thing. I define it as if I'm able to, if in an ideal version of myself I was able to fully appreciate the bliss and beauty of existence, there would be chaos and order that came
order is
within
more
that.
comfortable, and we can mistake comfort
As I walk
for
through,
love, but I think that is wrong.
as I walk through my life, there will be moments of order, seasons of order, and seasons of chaos. And the way to operate within that world, knowing that both of those things will be obstacles to me. Order may be an obstacle, chaos may be an obstacle, whatever it is. The way that I should walk through my life, that balance that you're talking about maybe, is living in pure adoration for each experience and each moment. And you can find, not that joy is the ultimate answer, but you can find meaning and beauty, right? In chaos, and you can find meaning and beauty in order. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Then I agree with it. Yeah.
My last thing that I want to say was something I tried to say forever ago, but I got on a million rabbit trails. It was when you talked about the woman from the Airbnb.
Oh yeah.
And you were talking about the horrible stuff she had to say to these people.
Yeah.
This is what happened, But it's interesting. I think a problem that we run into with religion is religion over time humanizes God too much. You think about The Invention of Lying. Have you ever seen the movie?
Yeah.
And in The Invention of Lying, for the people who haven't seen it, it's like
At the end, he makes up God.
well, yeah. Well, it's the beginning, really. It's kind of the whole plot is that no one's lied before, and he figures out how to lie, and he tells his mom who's dying. She's so sad, and she's like, "It's gonna be an eternity of nothingness," and he wants to make her feel better. So he goes, "No, it's not an eternity of nothingness. You're gonna go to your favorite place, and everybody you've ever missed and ever died is there. And there's this big man in the sky, and he is the one who made that place for you."
Right.
And basically, he made up God, the idea of God. It was basically the idea of someone making up religion.
Right.
Which is,
For better or for worse, whatever.
But I think the problem with that is that when you say that there's a man in the sky, like you humanize it that much, there's a man, think about a guy in the sky controlling everything like pieces on a game board, then you run into the problem of, that means if he created everything good, that he created everything bad and everything evil. And they even talked about that in The Invention of Lying. He was like, he created all the good stuff. And they're like, so he also created all the bad stuff? So he's the reason that my mom died of cancer, and he's the reason that I lost my car got stolen the other week? And he's like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, that too. And he's like, so he's a good guy, but he's also kind of a dick. And he was like, yeah, I guess.
Right.
And I was like, that's the problem you run into. That's the thing is, I don't think God or love is this man in the sky controlling everything that makes good and makes bad. I think God is the good.
I'm not saying that.
And the bad is anything but God. The bad comes from sin, which is missing the mark. So anytime you should always be striving for God. When you miss the mark, that's sin.
But there's
and
bad.
that's where it goes.
There's bad that's like the guy's mom with cancer is not really like a punishment for your sins or.
It's not a punishment, but it comes from so it's like the world. The way it's been described to me before is like the world was like this. It was like a straight line, right? Like a completely, let's say, a still pond or whatever, completely still. And sin, missing the mark, came into the world and just fucked it up. So it just started going like this, just up and down, and like it's like a ripple in the pond or whatever, you know. So it just kind of made the world uneven, and now bad things just happen sometimes as a result of that. If that makes sense.
Well, but if you define sin as us missing the mark, and sin is a term
it's anything missing the mark. It's reality, or it's not reality, but it's things in life missing the mark.
Okay.
So like imagine, your like allergies, like that's like your immune system missing the mark, I guess. You know, like you eat a peanut, it's like, oh my god, it's gonna kill me. It's like, no, it's just a peanut. Chill out. You know, it's like you're missing the mark. You're not getting this right. Something like that.
Maybe. Okay.
But that's kind of the problem I have with it. It's like I think that God is the good. He doesn't create the good.
Okay.
He's the good itself.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that Christian culture.
I think that's the problem is people say, why would God allow something like this? And it's like, it's not, you're thinking about it the wrong way. It's not deep. That's not deep enough. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you're thinking of some guy who's like at this control panel. That's like, it'd be funny if I did something horrible. Wouldn't that be funny? But that's like not. Yeah. That's not how it works.
God's a kid with a magnifying glass in his hands.
Like that's.
Right. No. So I think that.
It's a good reference.
Yeah.
Here's somebody.
Yep.
Sorry, keep going. What did you think?
I don't think that Christian culture tried to shape me. I mean, I don't think the teachers of Christian culture in my childhood tried to shape me to think this way, but it does seem like it's a common misconception among people as they're growing up in the Christian culture that God is somewhere in the clouds, right, looking down on us, and it kind of is that vibe that God is up there and we're down here. Yeah. And that's kind of like a Greek mythology more of interpretation of it.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the problem.
But I think that if people were to teach that God, and they even say like whenever you're getting baptized that you're asking God into your heart as if He's not already there. Yeah. You know, it's like you open. I remember specifically thinking as a kid that I had a heart that looked like this because I was a kid, right? Yeah. And there was a little door in it, and that whenever you got baptized, like Jesus moves in.
God's like a vampire.
Yeah, just like he gets all his stuff and like his extra halos that are polished, and he hangs them on the wall and picture frames of me and billions of other people. His family.
I just thought God is this piece in you. Is like God is like.
But if they were to have described it to me as a kid, as the fact that we're here is God, and the fact I would have had a deeper, the way that I'm kind of coming to terms with it now. I think that I would have had a deeper appreciation for life than I did growing up. When I did grow up that way, I remember thinking. I remember laying in bed being scared of God, that God was watching me in my bed, and like weird stuff, you know. And it's not really a healthy view of an almighty, all-knowing, and all-good God,
Well, I think the thing about...
That created a lot of fear in me as a kid, actually.
I think the thing is that religion seeks... And I think there are a lot of good parts of religion that have helped society for the better. So I think it is important. But I think religion personalizes God because it makes part of the reason because it makes people more comfortable.
What do you mean?
And I think people mistake comfort for
makes
goodness.
It a person sort of thing. Visually humanizes. Okay.
I think.
I think the way that I view it now is way more personal.
Well, because people say
I did.
People take. I know people today that will say in, the Bible, it says God made us in his image, which it does. And they'll say, so he probably looks like us. And I'm like, wow, that's so not deep enough for me.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what it meant.
Yeah.
I think it's consciousness itself.
God didn't
that's
create
reality.
a cloning machine. And then,
I know.
we just are his exact form.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that maybe because
that doesn't make sense because you think about people with
disabilities
or something.
Yeah.
Some people are born with like extra limbs and stuff, and they look different than what an average person would look like. I don't think they don't look like God. I still think they, for all intents and purposes, they look like God. They were still made in his image.
Right. Well, I think that what that refers to,
because people come in all
opinion,
shapes and sizes, and I don't think anybody looks any less like God.
I don't think it has anything to do with physical appearance. I think it's more, who I am is not this body. Who I am is, the core, the light inside of me, and the light inside of you is who you are. It has nothing to do with your appearance. There's times where I'm like, I don't know that the person I feel like looks like the person other people see. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't think that we're made in God's image in the way that we're born and we have skin and we have 2 eyes and 2 ears and all that. I don't think that it's anything like that. I think that what it is we're born into pure consciousness, and we have the gift of pure consciousness.
Why do we have 2 eyes? Why do you think we have 2 eyes?
Depth perception, I'm pretty sure.
I know, but why wasn't it just made so that we could have depth perception with 1 eye?
I don't know. We probably didn't get other ideas.
Do you think there's something to that though? Like maybe a balance?
Having 2 eyes?
Like having a balance?
We do have symmetry.
Well, just thinking about having a balance.
There's weird symmetry within like a man's head is supposed to be his shoulder width is supposed to be 3 of his heads.
Yeah. And
then like your arm span is supposed to be your body length, and there's a couple weird.
That wasn't right. I don't know what you're trying
Your
to say.
arm span is your body length.
Your body length?
That's what it's supposed to be.
That doesn't sound true at all.
Well, let's look it up.
I'm looking at you right now. It's not true.
I'm gonna measure it when I get
Your arm's length? What are you, like, people who are 6 foot are not 6 foot when they stretch out their arms.
Well, that was a big thing with Michael Phelps, is that he had the arm span of like an 8-foot man,
Jim,
and he was only 6 foot or something.
Think about a cross. When Jesus went like this, a cross is not a perfect plus sign.
The cross didn't end at his feet and at his head either. And it didn't end at the edge of his arms either.
It doesn't matter. The point is that I don't
It doesn't matter. I may be wrong about that, but there are symmetrical things about us that are interesting. I don't know if the eye thing has anything to do with that.
One of the last things I want to throw in is we learned this term. I'm going to say it wrong.
I'm going to look it up right now.
Do it.
This
term we learned was, I think it's gestalt, but it means that I'm sure you've heard this, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I was writing that down, and I just read all these extra little notes, but I wrote, gestalt means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Dash reality, dash consciousness, dash love, dash God, dash gestalt. But it's interesting because I think it's like, when you think about, there's this play called No Exit, which I think was wrong. I think it's an interesting play, and I like the play. But the idea in the end is basically he's sent to this afterlife where this guy is in a room, and there's the other 2 women that are with him, and they kind of drive each other insane. And at the end of the play, he realizes they're in hell, and he says the line, hell is other people. But I don't think that's true. I think it's wrong. It's an interesting idea, but I think it's wrong. Because I think the idea of other people, you watch something like The Last Man on Earth, and you realize, like in the first episode, because he's so alone, he's like, I realize that life isn't worth living without other people. If I don't feel its connectedness, like, there's no point of even being here. If there's no other living things.
Right.
So it's just not worth it,
So I looked it up, and it says, the distance between fingertips when arms are outstretched is about the same height as a person. The length of a person's foot is about equal to the length of his or her forearm.
Okay, that's my foot is larger than my forearm.
So there's some interesting symmetry in humans. That's what I was talking about. What I think you were, and I was kind of reading and listening at that last thing that you said.
Yeah.
But you're talking about experience isn't really worth it unless you experience it with someone else. Is that right?
Well, that's a more basic version of what I was saying. I think it's the connectedness, but even connectedness with I'm now connected to this piano. I can literally, I'm taking in information, and in my brain I can feel a physical object here because I'm connected to the rest of reality. Our 6 senses 5 senses.
Yeah.
Or 5 senses.
Do you have 6 senses?
Yeah, I do.
Wow, dude.
I'll tell you about it later. I'm thinking about M. Night Shyamalan. But
Wait, M. Night Shyamalan?
no, but like just the fact that I can be connected to the rest of the world. It's like this connectedness, this beauty in reality. That's what I meant. I never got into it in the last podcast when I said God was reality, but that's what I think. Like the fact that we do think. Like when I said in the poem, it's like, do you think? It's like, no, I'm not insulting you. I'm saying, do you think? Thinking. That's God.
Right. The ability to think.
The ability
Pure consciousness.
to think.
The ability to be conscious at all, to think, to be an individual.
It's
all of
so
that is
beautiful.
It's so beautiful, and it's...
So I think staying
divine
on the mark
is what
and
it
what
is.
the point of life is, searching for the meaning, searching for the beauty, and not letting anything trip you up.
I agree. This is good, man.
Yeah.
This is good talk.
It was a slow beginning. I really had to get into the groove of things.
Well, we talked about a lobster for a long time, and then...
When I was explaining the lobster thing, I just felt it in my mind. I was like, I'm going to push through and I'm going to seek the beauty. Because I am, like, not feeling it. I had, like, run up the stairs before we started this, so I was like, so I got this lobster tattoo, and I was just feeling that this was so stupid. No, but we slowly got into the
It was good, man.
groove of it.
It was real good.
So,
Talking is thinking, so it's good to talk. It's
talking
good to
is
think.
thinking. You can talk without thinking, though. People do it all the time. You ever talk to, like...
Yeah, that's very true. People do it
far too often.
far too often. Yeah.
I noticed. Okay.
I do it far too often.
I try so hard not to do this, but I was sharing, because I always at the beginning of the episodes share the podcast, and I'll ask a question normally so you can start talking, and I try to like catch the question in the middle, which is probably not a good system, but I was doing that last week with Jess, or a few days ago, and he's talking, and I catch myself going, yeah, okay, yeah, uh-huh, and then in the end, he like asked a question, and I went, yeah. He was like,
I like your shirt, man.
He was like, what do you think? And I was like, oh, sorry, restate everything you just said.
Yeah.
And he was like, what are you doing?
Right.
And I was like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't do that.
Well, you'll learn. You'll learn, baby.
Because we
You'll
talk
learn.
without thinking. You just go, yeah.
Social norms,
this
man.
is what
You're
I've
just
been.
following the
This is what I've been
social
taught to
norms.
do when people are talking to me, and so I can like robotically tune you out and still look like I'm listening.
Yeah.
That's weird, messed up. Anyways, this is a good talk.
It was. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for being here. My little coffee mug, I want to talk about it for the audio listeners, has a lobster on it. And he's holding a book that says 12 Rules of Lobster. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's pretty great.
Which is a nod to the Jordan Peterson novel called 12 Rules for Life. Great book.
In case y'all didn't know,
Great
we're both
mug.
fans of Jordan
Yeah, in
Peterson.
case we didn't mention it enough. I also left the evolution of my tattoo on this wall.
Yeah, that's good.
The two little pictures.
That's the drawing that I drew.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't actually give me the tattoo. Someone else did.
No. I would like to learn that, though. That'd be cool.
Anyways, good talk. I think that you should come on again sometime. And
Maybe.
We'll talk about the... Well, okay. I guess we'll talk about it off the podcast. No, yeah. Anyways, good talk. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for being here. So long, everybody.
Thank you. So long.